Welcome to Stories Behind the Wealth, the show where high-earning professionals discover the real-life moments behind financial success with your host, Gaffar Chowdhury. For almost 2 decades, he's helped successful individuals and business owners navigate wealth with clarity and confidence. On this show, we go beyond the spreadsheets, sharing the turning points, mind shifts, and personal stories that shape how people manage money and life. Money talks. We listen. And what we hear might just change the way you think.
Welcome back to the next episode of Stories Behind the Wealth. My name is Gaffar Chowdhury. I'm the president and CEO of District Wealth Strategies. Super excited to have my guest today, who is Naveen Krishnamurthy. Naveen is the founder and CEO of Riva Solutions, a Northern Virginia-based technology consulting firm specializing in digital transformation, cloud, cybersecurity, and enterprise IT solutions for federal agencies. With over 2 decades of experience in the technology and government contracting space, Naveen has built Riva Solutions into a trusted partner for mission-critical federal programs. His leadership journey reflects a blend of technical expertise, entrepreneurial grit, and a deep understanding of navigating the complexities of the public sector. From starting with a vision to building a high-impact organization, Naveen's story is one of resilience, strategic risk-taking, and long-term value creation. Without further ado, welcome Naveen Krishnamurthy.
Thanks. Thanks, Gaffar. Thanks for having me as well. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, my friend. We've been talking about this for a little while. I'm very happy that we're able to make it happen. So let's get right into it. So I know I shared a little bit about your bio, but tell us a little bit more about you, man. For starters, did you grow up in the DMV?
Yeah. Local product. Born and raised in this area in the DMV. Born in Baltimore. Grew up in Silver Spring, and went to University of Maryland for both undergrad and grad as well.
That's awesome. I'm sorry about what basketball's doing, man. That was a tough thing to watch this season.
Yeah, definitely. Football's never been good to us, and then basketball wasn't great either. But we've got some promising talent coming in, so we'll see how it goes in the next couple of years.
Yeah. So in the corner here, you probably can't see, I've got an autographed basketball from Virginia Tech, which is where my undergrad was, and that autographed basketball is from Buzz Williams, who is now the coach at Maryland. I feel really bad for Buzz with what's going on. I mean, he's a phenomenal coach. I hope this is the learning curve that they needed to have, Yeah.
In fact, I was there yesterday at University of Maryland, touring the stadium and chatting with them. And we're looking at building a stronger partnership since all of us, a lot of us on the leadership team went to Maryland, and they're doing some cool things in their business schools, some programs to kind of work with partners in the industry. So we think there's a lot of talent there to hire as well.
That's awesome, man. That is a great segue actually into what I was going to ask next. What was your first exposure to business and/or IT? Was it at Maryland?
No, honestly, I mean, I got 3 degrees at Maryland. I did finance, information systems, and economics, so learned a lot of the fundamentals. But I really wanted to be a finance major. That's really where I was headed. But I think what pushed me to IT is, kind of giving away my age here, but the dot-com boom was just like amazing. Everything with the dot-com at the end of it, the stock was like skyrocketing, and it was just like wild, wild west. And, that kind of drew me away from finance into the area of technology. And, I really got excited learning about it because so much of it was just still new and blue sky.
Yeah. What were you doing before you founded Riva?
Let's see. I after working for T. Rowe Price out of college and kind of like realizing that unless I was going to move to New York or North Carolina, I wasn't sure that was going to be the financial path for me.
Yeah.
I switched over into IT. I started working for some large firms like CACI and Booz Allen. So some large service providers in federal government. I worked in the .com industry as well, so I did that. Working for a supply chain company called Commerce One, I think their stock went from like 15 to 650 overnight. And
wow.
over there, I was a road warrior, doing supply chain B2B portals and place like New York for Con Edison and Orlando with Lockheed Martin. And, they were headquartered out of Pleasanton in San Francisco. So I was there a lot. So, it was a really fun gig in your 20s, kind of going around, being on the road and kind of learning how to be virtual at that age.
Wow.
Which is now the reality of today. So I kind of learned it there, but it was a very different vibe from, kind of like technology here in GovCon. It was flip flops and ping pong and, beer kegs everywhere. So it's just a different vibe growing up in that industry.
So basically, you were thriving.
Yeah, yeah. Everybody was winning. Everyone was growing. You couldn't do no wrong back then. So it was a lot of fun.
That's awesome, man. So let's talk about your journey into starting Riva. Was there a specific problem that you saw that others weren't solving?
Well, I mean, one of the things I kind of figured out through my journey, I realized that, whether I was a billable consultant, working with the government, uh, whatever role I had, I was always kind of really interested to solve the problem. I was a bit of an idealist that I really wanted to understand their mission and program. I wanted to understand what kept them up at night. I wanted to like figure out what they were trying to implement. And, I was kind of quickly told a lot of times like, hey, I got to improve the profit and loss. I gotta, improve the margins and I got to increase the growth on the contract. And one of the things, I understand the financial side of the business, but I think I always recognize that, by working for other firms and, feeling like just a number, and I just thought that it would be interesting if you took some of the elements of a .com, of being a little bit more, cutting edge or a little bit more fun and edgy. And then you combine some of the basic elements of what if employees liked working for their company and what if customers were happy that you were a partner for them. So I really kind of espoused the idea that between your customers, your partners, and your employees, people were happy and satisfied, but we were also having fun doing it. And that was really the principles I took from just my career path getting to that spot. It wasn't about, world domination and, $100 million plus, government firm and some fancy business plan. It was just really, hey, it would be great if we just I had a firm where I would love to work there.
That's awesome. And how long ago did you take that entrepreneurial leap?
17 years. 17 years. I know. It's like it must have started in elementary school. but yeah, it's been quite a journey. And sometimes it's weird to think about that. I think prior to Riva, I don't think I ever worked anywhere more than 2.5, 3 years max.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I think it's safe to say you were trying to figure out what you wanted to do, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's lost a lot of times. Like we have a lot of employee programs. We have a cool one called Riva Next, which is to kind of build the leaders of tomorrow. And I think what we recognize is people hit a glass ceiling in the mid-level of their career where they're kind of the expert of everything, but they don't have the autonomy to actually lead anything. And so I always felt kind of that way. And I really wanted to make sure in Riva, we nurture the upcoming kind of rising stars. And so we've always done a great job grooming our talent within.
That's fantastic. And how many employees now as a company?
We're 229, I think, as of today. I think in kind of going through that, what to me, one of the greatest stats, now being a midsize is not, top line revenue or employee headcount, it's enterprise value. But I like watching things like looking at some of the tenure of some of our staff that have worked here for 10 plus years, 8 years, 7 years, because there's just so much chemistry, camaraderie, and goodwill, and even paying it forward to teaching the new folks coming in. That just makes the job really easy, especially in a virtual working environment.
Yeah. And are your employees all over the country at this point?
All over the country. I think post-COVID or even during COVID, we were one of the first GovCon companies to go virtual. We really just I wanted to root some of my own experiences doing it in the .com era. And then I wanted to kind of recognize that it was going to take a couple years for us to figure out how do you build a performance-based culture in a virtual world, and how creative do you have to get that people aren't just on some small boxes every day going, hey, why don't I just somebody offered me 20-30% more, I'll move over to another box. And so we really had to show that there's a quality to working with us. And I kind of talk about it as somewhere in your career journey, you'll be at Riva. So along the way, hopefully you learn, you contributed your ideas, you cross-pollinated to learn other skill sets, and you made some friends along the way. And that's kind of what we try to do in our employees' journey.
Yeah, that speaks a lot to the culture that you've built as a leader. It speaks a lot about you as a leader. So, so kudos, man. That's awesome. Obviously, you're doing something right.
Yeah, and I think the idea here is that you got to work hard and play hard, but I think it's like it's really to humanize this. A lot has been said about work-life balance, and what is the exact terminology, but I think it's like silly things like on a State of the Union, I'll be like, oh, I forgot to plug in my laptop. I'll be right back. Or my dog like crawled across my laptop, or it's just like, hey, we're all real people. Like you don't have to like put on some pretense. Doesn't mean you're smarter or not just because you're not a real person. But at the same time, there's expectations. You got to have performance goals, and right now it's so much easier with data really driving how the performance is doing, and you just share that with your employees so they can self-monitor their progress tied to their goals. So that makes it a lot easier, and especially with your employee relationship.
So true. So true. When you think back and when you first started, was there a big break that happened initially, or a first contract that was like, okay, hey, we're going to be okay. We're going to be all right?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's many stages of like going through the small business maturity model and then being mid-sized, but in the small business maturity model, I think you kind of like go through these mini stages of like sub to prime, and maybe you leverage a set aside, you got to build out an infrastructure, you go, why did I do this? I must be crazy and stuff. But I think once you start getting past that $5 million mark, you start like going, saying, hey, maybe I'm not going to have sleepless nights because it is a lifestyle running a company. And you start to go, as you said, exactly that. I think we're going to be okay, dude. There's some momentum here to ride.
Yeah, no, that's great. Any major setbacks or failures that you experienced along the way that almost derailed you?
I wouldn't say anything derailed me. I think that, it's kind of like I always say running around a track, and we can all look at it that we're running around the track. I look at it that there's hurdles around the track, and we have to become really good at the hurdles. And so we've conditioned our company to go through things like COVID, go through government shutdowns, litigation, Doge recently. And I think these are like, we're used to some of these things now.
Yeah.
I think it's your ability to adapt and show and demonstrate that to your government customers that kind of help set you apart. And so some of that is really built into your strategy. Do you have diversification? Do you have a strong capability set? Do you have really strong relationships? So you got to look under every rock and play every one of those strategies. You can't take shortcuts. And I think that's really given us the ability to really transcend my expectations and grow to the size that we have.
Yeah, yeah. And those examples that you listed, I think had you not gone through those quote unquote hurdles, you would not be where you are. The culture wouldn't be where it is, and you wouldn't have the resiliency that you guys have. Yeah.
I think I have a speech queued up for a award ceremony, but I kind of always got second place in a lot of these, and I think my speech was, I don't remember. It was to all the CEOs in the room, and I said, I don't remember actually winning some of our contract awards. I remember the second places. And I said, that's like really what builds the resiliency and gives you that competitive edge to kind of do the continuous improvement to say we're going to get better year over year.
Yeah, yeah. What did those experiences teach you about leadership and being a founder?
I mean, it's okay to fail, break some eggs to make an omelet and, take some risks. That's part of being an entrepreneur slash CEO is you got to take a leap of faith. But, kind of, taking it on the sidelines and paralysis by analysis and kind of really not taking your shots. I mean, you're not gonna move forward. And so you kind of have to keep having forward momentum if you're going to be successful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So 250 employees almost, right? And growing. When you look back and just think about, what's happened over the last 17 years, and even when you first started your professional journey out of Maryland, what does wealth mean to you today?
Well, I mean, to me, it's funny because we have this state discussion about like in Virginia, when you see somebody, there's a little bit of what do you do, what do you drive kind of thing mentality. But a lot of times when I'm in, Florida, for example, I spend a lot of times in the winter there. It's more like you kind of chit chat about everything else, and I think to me the wealth is like really enjoying time with my family and the kids and spending some time with my dogs and doing some of the hobbies like right now pickleball is a lot of fun and learning this new skill sets. I think that's actually I think I'm on day 780 on Duolingo, for example.
Holy
And
cow.
so like I think those things are enjoyable and I think it's really important for business owners because I think there is a tendency to kind of get addicted to that wealth dopamine and keep chasing wealth. And then you lose sight of like what was your actual real goal.
Yeah. Yeah. 200 plus days, you said, Duolingo?
I think I'm at like 780 in a row.
Oh
But
my God, man.
I'm gonna give you a couple of breaks. It's not as like clear cut as that.
What's the language that you're learning? Is it one specific language or multiple?
Spanish, yeah, yeah.
Wow.
If you're gonna spend a lot of time in Florida, you got to learn some Spanish.
That's true. That's true. Where's your go-to place in Florida? Miami?
Miami, yeah,
Yeah.
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 The diversity there, the jump off points, a lot of nice, beautiful islands.
Yeah.
It, there's a whole side of Miami that isn't the touristy side. That's where you just wear a backwards hat and flip flops and walk out onto the beach, and and then that's the daily routine.
Yeah. And as you probably know, South Florida is becoming quite the tech hub these days.
Oh, it is. I
Yeah.
mean, watching over the last 10 years, I mean, the transplants from the Northeast post-COVID, Brickell is just amazing. The traffic, of course, comes with it,
Oh my
and
God.
really the
Yeah.
culture shifts a little bit, but is this, I think, all about the neighborhoods you stay in.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Um, Thinking a little bit about your day-to-day, what habits or principles contribute most to your success and your routine?
That's a really good question because I think over the last 3 years or so, I've been kind of on what I call it my spiritual, physical, and mental journey. And, I think that's really changed how my approach is in the morning routine where, I don't want to look at my phone and do any work for the first 2 hours. I want to like incorporate some level of meditation. I'll get on Duolingo or apps like Wordle to do some like brain puzzles. I'll do some stretching and things like that. I really like Blinkist a lot. I don't know if you've ever tried Blinkist to kind of get
No.
it's an audible and you can like listen to like 15, 20 minutes of your favorite books
Oh,
while
wow. Yeah.
yeah, like while you're working out or cardio or weights and things like that.
There's a
But
similar app called Wise.
okay,
I think it's very similar. Yeah.
yeah, and I think like I kind of walk through that routine along with like making sure I'm putting electrolytes in my water and doing things before my coffee to really kind of mentally prepare for the day and even like thinking about the day. What's the most important thing for me today that I really want to accomplish? What and making sure I avoid traps like why did I just do 8 meetings in a row and not eat lunch?
Yeah.
Let
Yeah.
me stand up and walk around a little bit and chase some 10,000 steps a day. So I'm being active, and a lot of these are if you ever read the book Atomic Habits, it's
Yeah.
really about building habits of which requires a lot of discipline. But when you start doing it not as fads but discipline, then suddenly the work part becomes like so much easier
Yeah.
as you're
Yeah.
patient. You let your mind wander to solving the problems that you couldn't crack, and you're able to collaborate, communicate much more effective as a leader.
Absolutely. So, as a leader of a business that's been super successful and hopefully continues to grow, and also as a dad, how do you think about legacy?
Good question. I mean, I've been looking a lot, when you start embarking about wealth management, there's kind of, there's that phrase old money and there's wealth creators. And I think when you're a wealth creator, you might you have a different item to solve for your children. It isn't, they weren't really raised the same way you were. They're privileged to have a lot of the things you're able to work hard and do, but you also have to instill like the ethics and morality and values that you want to make sure that they're prepared for the world. So I think the legacy is really making sure that you're preparing your children, once they embark on college, to be ready for the real world, but not necessarily in the same likeness of yourself, because they have an interesting new opportunity and challenge that they have to learn about wealth management. They have to learn to be young leaders at an earlier age because, between, estate planning and trusts and learning about, distributions and real estate and all the fallacies that come with that.
Absolutely.
Where, you have to kind of really build that, between books and dialogues and quarterly meetings. You gotta like, and introducing peers. There's so much to teach them that has, way more than like putting your name on a building or things like that. I think that's what I think of when I think of legacy.
Very well said. Very well said. You touched on some very important things that I think, a lot of executives, business owners overlook, right? When it comes to legal documents and just proper planning, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, asset protection alone, my eyes start spitting into the back of my head. I understand. And I'm very candid with my advisor. I'm like, I'm not an expert here, it becomes a second job, honestly.
Yeah.
And it's one that you're not prepared for, and nobody says it. There's like not a real blueprint to follow, and so that's why I think it's really important to find like-minded people and talk to them informally as peers and say, man, how are you solving this problem? What did you do with this? What did you do with that? And because I think that peer-to-peer group, and there's so many great ones like YPO, and there's Vistage, and I just joined R360.
Oh, nice.
These are phenomenal groups to find amazing people to learn from.
Yeah. Kind of developing a cohort, right, of like-minded individuals that you can bounce ideas off of.
Right. And it's also making sure you don't establish hubris. You can't sit there and let the fame and power go to your head. You got to always stay humble and check that ego and really recognize you got to pay it forward and give back to the community. And these are such critical elements that also require discipline. And I think that's really critical that we pause and take stock of being part of groups like this versus just kind of doing things in a silo, because that also is lonely and it could be very scary at times too.
Very true. Very true. All right, we're gonna get into some rapid fire questions and liven things up a bit. All right.
All right. Well, one like that where I had to eat hot wings, so this one should be easier, hopefully.
Yeah. So the first thoughts that kind of come to mind, feel free to share. First off, this is pretty easy. I think you touched on a couple already. Is there a book that influenced you most over the years?
The Alchemist. I mean, if you ever check my backpack or any sort of thing I travel with, you'll always find a copy. I mean, I think I've reread that sucker so many times. It just said such a good message that I just think everyone should read that.
Yeah, I've heard great things about it. You've just kind of nudged me to pick it up and actually read it, so I'm going to have to check that out. Next, are you a morning person or night person?
I think I'm a night person that's turned into morning with age. Now you start to appreciate your sleep more and track things like HRV, and you start to like wear a Oura ring, and I think you go, man, if I could start my day earlier, I'm getting that early workout in, and I'm really cruising into the day, and I just think that comes with age. But it did take a lot for me to switch.
Yeah, yeah. Quick plug for the Aura Ring. I wear one as well, and it's
Yeah,
fantastic, man. Because
right.
I can't wear a watch to sleep. It just feels uncomfortable.
100%. But
Yeah.
if you start to embark on the journey of learning biohacking, it's phenomenal because you start to realize that we're all deconstructed in a different way based on our genetic code. Like if I'm South Asian, so the fact that we follow all these health habits that are codified, it makes no sense. You really have to like look at all the data in these markers and build your own health plan if you're going to be successful. I'm just still learning all this, so
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
excited when I see all the data going. Oh, I need to eat this and I need to do this more, and it isn't like let me go. Nothing against the CrossFitters out there, but it isn't like. Well, let me go and do that with 20 kids, people 20 years younger than me, and blow out my knee or something.
Yeah. Or you're back, then you're done.
Well,
Yeah.
that's why I stick to pickleball because I call it my old man exercise.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. We've got into paddle, my wife and I, over the last couple of years. It's fun, man. It's a lot of fun.
I want to try it. You
Yeah,
got to me out sometime.
absolutely. Absolutely. To go back to our rapid fire, what is something people assume about you that's completely wrong?
I think a lot of people think I'm an extrovert. They see me a lot leading our growth efforts at Riva, and I think I definitely have made a lot of phenomenal friends in this industry, and I try to beat the pavement in some of the networking events, and like I'm like a sponge trying to learn from everybody, and I think by doing that for 2 decades, they're like, oh, this guy must be so social, and honestly, a lot of times I just like watching hockey at home and like taking care of my dogs and just chilling out. That's
Yeah,
actually how I think really helps reset your meter to kind of on a weekly basis.
love it. Love it. I think they came out, psychologists, I think came out with a new personality type. It's like an introvert or something like that, which
I
is,
saw that. The other thing is I've been tracking is the archetype is I think some maybe I kind of like it more than Myers-Briggs, but if you haven't done it, I would take an archetype test.
yeah, I'll have to check that out. Yeah. Are you more of a risk taker or calculated strategist?
People say I'm a risk taker. I think I'm not at all. I hedge really significantly, but I will take the risks, but I do the measurement to say how much risk tolerance do I have, just like you would with your stock portfolio.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, I'm not like, for example, a lot of my friends will day trade and they heard about a stock and plow a ton of money in it and start putting in, options. And I'm just like, nah, I'm good. Let me just beat the S&P and you look in some, alternate investments and stuff. But, I think you gotta take those risks, right? You don't want that money sitting on the sideline, but, I think you have to be somewhat cautious as well.
So true. Um, you've built a great size team, a great size leadership team as well. What's one word your team would use to describe you?
Servant leader is 2 words, but I'm gonna
I'll
cheat on.
take it.
Yeah, I'm gonna cheat on that question, but I hopefully you can gauge this. I never come in trying to pontificate and tell everybody I know everything. You have to, as a leader, you're put under a microscope, be just a decision maker and yield respect and authority, which you have to earn. But hiring people around you that are smart, making sure they're motivated, treating them with respect, and building that chemistry and camaraderie. I think that's always been my superpower. Whatever I do, whether it's running Riva or being commissioner of a fantasy football league. You know, I think these are just leadership qualities, and it really really generates the powerfulness of people being excited to kind of do something together. And I think that's really critical versus just coming in and say, let me bark orders and have a carrot and stick and run the company that way. And it's tough to lose sight of that.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
think that's why it's really important to, like, I'll take the leadership team out and say, hey, let's go out. One guy lives in Annapolis. Let's go out there on a boat. Another person is a member at Riverbend. Hey, let's go hang out there, one day and do one of our meetings out there. Hey, the weather is nice. Let's do the meeting outside. So
yeah.
I'm very much let's not be so prescriptive in our approach, and that we have to do a board meeting, we have to do this, we have to do that, and say, what's the pulse? What do people need right now? And I think that's the organizational behavior aspect is the most, I think, underappreciated part of the job we do.
That's fantastic. Yep. I would definitely agree with you. So we're coming to the end of our episode, but as folks listen to this and they think about you as a professional and entrepreneur and the company Riva, what would be a good way for them to get in touch with you or find out more? LinkedIn, website, email. Feel free to share anything.
Yeah. I'm definitely pretty power user on LinkedIn.
Okay.
I definitely try to get through those. Now, I think like the kids say, email's like really formal now.
Yeah.
And website, I don't even know if I've been on our website for a while. Everything's on mobile now, is it?
Yeah.
But I think LinkedIn. I go to a lot of really well-known events in the GovCon circles, so that's always where you might see me as well. And
that's how we met. Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, maybe I'll see you on the pickleball courts or something.
Absolutely.
That'd be another place to see you.
Awesome. So final thought, if you could go back and talk to your younger self, what would you say?
Well, specific to being an entrepreneur, I think it's to make sure you don't lose your self-identity in the process. I think you go into the lifestyle, you have to work your butt off, and it is a lot of stress. And I think that the key on that is you can turn yourself into a machine going through that process. And so I think it's really critical that you enjoy the journey, not just the destination, and along the way, really celebrate the small wins and with your families and your friends, and additionally with your colleagues. And I think that that is sometimes very difficult for us to do when we are doing yes or no decisions that are $1 million impact decisions. That we have to learn to kind of build that balance.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for the time this afternoon. This has been fantastic. I really enjoyed the conversation. We'll have to bring you back for another episode. I feel like there's so much more to Naveen that we haven't, uncovered. And, I'm looking forward to seeing the continued success for you and Riva.
Hey, I appreciate it. We have a great team, and, we're going to keep riding the back of our mascot, Alpaca Shakur. Our alpaca is the one that leads the way in our brand.
That's awesome.
Thank you for tuning in to Stories Behind the Wealth. Be sure to click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. If you're a busy, accomplished professional or a business owner looking to build confidence in your financial future, visit us at districtwealthstrategies.com or call 202-759-8524 to learn how our team can help. Because money talks, we listen, and the stories are just getting started. The views and opinions expressed are those of the program participants and are not necessarily those of MML Investor Services, LLC. The material is not intended as recommendations appropriate for you. You should strongly consider seeking advice from your own investment specialist. Gaffar Chowdhury is a registered representative of and offers securities through MML Investor Services, LLC, member SIPC, OSJ 530 Gaither Road, Suite 350, Rockville, Maryland, 20850, phone number 301-355-5800. District Wealth Strategies is not a subsidiary or an affiliate of MML Investor Services, LLC.